Hey everyone, it is October 31st, 2020, and Blackie is here with me in the lab. I said I was not going to do another one of these videos before the wedding on the 7th, but Twitter and some conversations got me thinking, and I'll give you one more before then. There's going to be several, and actually tonight we're going to try to catch the full moon / blue moon rising tonight as well. So that video will be out too, but it won't be out probably till late November, even though we'll record it tonight. But anyway, what do I want to talk about today? So there's a gold mine of stuff. We had a great Twitter feed on a question I had asked, and that's rare. Usually it's not that good, but it was. But anyway, I'm taking a part from there for right now. I'm going to talk about how we definitely need to take philosophy and science and have them as separate entities. They need to be separate from one another. We need a firm, definitive line between the two. I'll get into why later, but I mean, I know science came from philosophy. I know it's the philosophy of methodological naturalism. Utilizes scientific method. I actually have an entire video on the scientific method, so I'm not going to go into it here. It'll be in the description. I get that. I understand that. But at some point, the kid grows up, becomes his own, and leaves. Maths also came from philosophy, but there aren't too many people that would really connect the two anymore. Things change, and I believe science has matured enough to the point where it can stand alone. Yeah, you use some of the same tools. We do that all the time. Just because I have a screwdriver in my hand doesn't mean I'm building cabinets, all right? And that's an analogy. And we'll touch on that a little bit. But anyway, the key difference between the two is philosophy is based on priori knowledge. Well, what is that? That's just stuff that's considered to be true without being based on previous experience or observation. It's an assumed truth or piece of knowledge or whatever. It hasn't been vetted in any way. And the only way you can really take something like that and show that it's useful is to argue. Now, arguments are very limited, as are analogies in science, and in philosophy they're extrapolated, carried to the nth degree, and all of that. But in science, what matters is testable or empirical knowledge, which is based on verifiable observation or experience. It's not an assumed truth. Science isn't in the business of truth at all. It's in the business of describing the natural world based on current available data and, the utilization of the scientific method. It's not, nothing in science is really a guess other than the starting point. And arguments can serve in science as a starting point, but they cannot be used in lieu of data. All right, and you usually see this in scientific letters, like reviews of papers. An argument to the contrary will be proposed, and that can be a starting point to get somebody else going, or that person, and to come up with an alternative hypothesis that can be tested. Because not only are things in science need to be verifiable, they need to be falsifiable. I don't need to verify or falsify anything in this. I can try. I mean, have you ever argued with somebody on a position that's not based in any sort of evidence? It doesn't ever go anywhere. It's not, and that's why this is important, and this has its place, all right? Science, being based off of testable knowledge, is limited. I can only really use it to describe what I can observe and test, and others can observe and test. So we're limited by our own built-in equipment and our technology. So science only deals with the natural world. There are some things that we consider supernatural or unexplainable that might be explainable, but there are some things science just cannot deal with at all, and probably never will. Like, is there a sort of creator outside of space-time? Well, we can't observe anything and test anything out of space-time. We can make cool equations, we can make cool assumptions, but that's all they are. all right? Philosophy deals with that kind of stuff. And I don't care about what science doesn't deal with. And the reason why I think we need a firm line between the two, other than the obvious reason that they are separate, significantly, is that people who try to merge the two, there are some people who try to make everything philosophy, science, literature, art, everything. It's all philosophy, everything. The problem when you do that is you have muddied the definition and the concept so much it becomes meaningless. I mean, this is a rock. If I start saying this is a rock, and this is a rock, and this box of Kleenex is a rock, this book is a rock, see, it loses its relevance, all right? So you need to keep it separate if you want to keep this relevant. You can't just start calling everything philosophy because you suck at science and math, all right? That's not how that works, okay? And as a scientist, I am not very good with this, and I admit that. It's not my thing. It really isn't. But what is my thing is this. And the distinction between the two is needed because people who suck at both of these but think they're good at this, call them armchair philosophers, people who've ever interacted with young earth creationists or with flat earthers or conspiracy nuts are very familiar with the armchair philosopher. All right? Now, people, and not just, professional philosophers, I think, understand the difference between the two and would probably side with me that the two are separate. But a lot of people think they can use philosophical tools to falsify scientific concepts, and you cannot do that. That's why we have the scientific method. There's a saying, in science, if you can't show it, you don't know it. It's an assumption. You may treat it as a truth because philosophy, doesn't matter. But here, science doesn't deal in truths. And that's why it changes and adapts. We describe the natural world based off testable methods and observations. We develop hypotheses. We develop testable models that others can verify or falsify. That is something this doesn't do. This also is pretty locked down in logic. All right? And science uses logic too. Like I said, you can use the same tools, but that doesn't mean you're equivalent. All right? But logic is limited in science because we have to be able to verify what we think we know. Because in science, we don't say we know. I get in general speak, people do. In general speak, people say truth or stuff like that. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about solid science. We would never say we know. For sure, 100%. Doesn't happen. Technology changes. We gather more data. That's why it keeps on evolving and moving forward, where this can stagnate on stuff like definitions. For months, I've seen it happen. Okay? And so testable knowledge, so science, where was I going with that? Oh yeah, logic. Science, the observable world and the universe isn't beholden to our concepts of logic. Yeah, we could use logic to base observations off of, or generic observations like, this is a rock, and based off my experience, I'm going to use logic to deduce that this is probably a mafic volcanic rock. Now, to verify that, there's a bunch of tests I can and will run. Actually, I know what that is. It's the peridotite from Presque Isle near Marquette. But anyway, I digress. But science doesn't work strictly off logic. There are concepts in science that defy human logic. The theory of relativity. It's not based on logic. Let's take one little part of it. As you get two observers, one's moving faster and faster towards the speed of light. Time actually, wait, let me make sure I get that right. Yes, time, God damn it, Steve. I don't want to get this wrong. But I'm just going to leave this here. Maybe it's a different video, and for some reason I am brain farting hardcore on this. But basically, logic would say the faster somebody moves, all right, if they could move really, 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 really fast and faster, that they could do things really quickly and that the outside world slows down. Actually, the exact opposite occurs. As you approach the speed of light here, now I got it, time for you slows down, time to the relatively stationary observer speeds up. That's counterintuitive of logic. All the theory of relativity is counterintuitive to logic. You know what else is counterintuitive to logic? Quantum mechanics. This is not logical at all. I don't even pretend to know anything about that. I do have a basic physics background, so I do understand a lot of relativity. So I had a mishap brain malfunction there. But science doesn't have to be based off of assumed truths and arguments based off of logic. Right? It doesn't function that way at all. Like I said, you can use it as a starting point. And analogies too. Analogies don't have a place in science really other than to help someone understand something. And in science, we realize an analogy is limited. If I am using this to describe just this part, say, I'm using this as an example of, let's say, a grain silo. This is a 3D object. Obviously, this isn't a grain silo. And I want to talk to you about volume of this. I can use this and describe a cylinder to you as an analogy and say we could fill up something proportionally to this, but that's where the analogy ends. Analogies are not made to be extrapolated to the nth degree, which is something that occurs all the time in this. I see it all the time. Like, can I use can I use the concept of machinery to describe, some sort of process within the human body? Yeah, I can. To a limited degree, some happenings within biological organisms are analogous to what happens with a machine or a factory. But that's it. At that level, it stops. You can't sit there and say, well, since a human body has properties of a factory or a piece of machinery, therefore evolution can't happen because a pile of parts won't sit there and form by themselves without a factory to form a jet airplane or car or whatever. That doesn't happen in science. That's ridiculous philosophical salad tossing. Analogies are meant to be focused concepts. They aren't meant to be extrapolated. That's why you don't see them in scientific papers, okay? Because other than an explanation, they aren't worth anything. Or to help someone understand something. And I've already touched on, arguments and stuff like that. I think, so to sum up, basically, the two are different. This has matured to a point where it is separate from this. Yes, it's born from it, whatever, irrelevant. It is totally different. It is more limited in scope than this is, but this produces. This doesn't really produce, all right? It doesn't. I can base technologies off of deductions in science, and we do. I can't base technologies off of much of anything in philosophy. Like I said, did give us maths, which was good. But anyway, I don't know if you agree or disagree with me, but I think we do need a solid line between the two now. Basically, to keep people from thinking they can use philosophical type arguments to falsify scientific concepts. So anyway, that's it. If you agree or disagree, let me know. Leave some comments below. We can have discussions. Blackie says hi, and him is Halloween Kitty. His birthday is in a couple of weeks. I just made it on mine. For those of you that don't know here, Blackie spent the first 3 years of his life feral outside. You can probably see he has some scars on him and stuff. He had a rough kitty life. He came to me in bad shape. He was looking for someone to help him. That was 4 years ago. And he's a lot better now. He does have feline AIDS or feline immunity, or FIV. the equivalent of HIV. But he is doing well. His eyes don't goop anymore. He is chipped now. He's doing a lot better than he was. I just try to keep him comfortable and keep him going. And for being feral, he is the sweetest cat. Anyway, that's it. I think I'm going to cut this off. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them below.